Kia ora everyone, this is almost everything you'll need to know about the cubital fossa. The cubital fossa is a triangular shaped tissue space between the arm and the forearm anteriorly, just anterior to the elbow joint. The superior border of the cubital fossa is an imaginary line drawn between the two epicondyles of the humerus, between the medial and lateral epicondyles, and the other two borders of the triangle are muscular, and they're muscles that we haven't met yet, so I'll just draw in the borders and we'll talk about the muscles later. The floor of the cubital fossa partially consists of a muscle that we have met before, and that's the brachialis muscle. Recalling that brachialis arises from most of the anterior surface of the distal half of the humerus and has an insertion at the ulnar tuberosity here, forming a good part of the floor of the cubital fossa. The other muscle that contributes to the floor is the supinator muscle. Supinator arises from the supinator crest and fossa on the lateral part of the proximal ulna here, between the two bones, and stretches out laterally, crossing behind the radius, and then curling around the proximal shaft and neck of the radius here. Also has some humeral fibers that descend more vertically and contributes to the floor of the cubital fossa a little. The contents of the cubital fossa consist of the tendon of biceps attached here at the radial tuberosity, a cord-like tendon which eventually expands up into the muscle belly. Medial to that is the brachial artery, which enters the cubital fossa, divides near the apex of the triangle into its terminal branches, the radial artery and the ulnar artery. And closely related to the brachial artery is the median nerve, which courses through the arm anterior to the artery, but just as it enters the cubital fossa moves medially, so the median nerve. The median nerve is medial in the cubital fossa but becomes median in the forearm, so it does move more into the midline. So those three structures are prominent in the cubital fossa. Partially hidden by the lateral border is the radial nerve, which you will recall entered the anterior compartment by perforating the lateral intermuscular septum in the distal arm and then crossed the elbow joint anteriorly. And the radial nerve splits into two branches, one a deep or motor branch which pierces the supinator muscle here, supplies it, and then curls around the back of the radius to become the posterior interosseous nerve, which is the motor nerve of the extensor compartment. The other branch is the superficial branch of the radial nerve, which supplies the skin of the posterior forearms. Those are the complete contents of the cubital fossa, apart from fat and lymph nodes. So radial nerve, biceps brachii tendon, brachial artery, and median nerve. Making a brief appearance in this diagram would be the musculocutaneous nerve, which you may recall runs between brachialis and biceps in the arm, but then becomes more superficial as the biceps muscle tapers to its tendon, and then becomes cutaneous and is renamed the lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm. So the muscular part of the musculocutaneous nerve supplied the anterior muscles of the arm. The cutaneous part becomes the lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm. The muscular borders now are the pronator teres muscle medially, so from the common flexor origin, the medial epicondyle of the humerus, it stretches across to the lateral part of the proximal shaft of the radius. It's an elongated or fusiform muscle, so that's teres means elongated. There's a pronator quadratus elsewhere in the forearm, in case you're wondering about the name. The lateral border of the cubital fossa is the brachioradialis muscle, which has its proximal attachment high on the lateral supraepicondylar ridge of the humerus, quite bulky proximally, and stretches down to the radial styloid. So even though it's technically an extensor muscle because it's supplied by the radial nerve, its orientation may have changed over evolution and it's now become a flexor muscle. Brachioradialis, just redraw the lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm. So those muscles helping form this triangular shaped cubital fossa. If we consider the other muscles, just sketch them in. Let's say the other mass of other forearm flexors here, triceps. We can draw in the fascia, the deep fascia which surrounds the arm, the brachial fascia and the antebrachial fascia here, and that forms a sleeve over the upper limb. The deep fascia is pierced by the cutaneous nerves, lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm here, and the medial cutaneous nerve will make its appearance, recalling that that is the branch directly of the medial cord of the brachial plexus, which has travelled through the arm and becomes cutaneous at the level of the cubital fossa. So the medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm, lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm, the posterior cutaneous nerve of the forearm is a branch of the superficial radial nerve. Just superficial to the deep fascia, running in the subcutaneous fat of the skin, are the superficial veins of the upper limb, and laterally is the cephalic vein, which is more towards the head end when the arm is abducted, and medially the basilic vein, and these carry on into the arm. They communicate via a median cubital vein, which is a favourite target for venipuncturists. And often there's a median antecubital vein, or median vein of the forearm, which also contributes to that vein, making it quite plump and a juicy target for poking needles in. Covering all this would be skin. So here's another view of the cubital fossa, a bit tidier than my diagram, and we can see the boundaries would be here and like this in this particular diagram. This is a superficial dissection, essentially just with skin and deep fascia removed, so we can see biceps here. This is the tendon of biceps. This fascial extension is the bicipital aponeurosis. It just blends with the deep fascia over the bulk of the superficial flexor muscles medially here. So biceps, we can glimpse a bit of brachialis poking out from underneath the biceps. The muscular border here, medially pronator teres, and laterally brachioradialis. The contents visible in the superficial dissection, the tendon of biceps, which we've seen, the brachial artery, and medial to it, the median nerve. You can also see the lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm becoming superficial here. This is where it would carry on to, and the medial cutaneous nerve of the arm, these are its distal branches here. So it would have emerged somewhere like this, let's say. We can also see those superficial veins, proximal and distal, but here would be the cephalic vein. Here it's proximal continuation, the basilic. Say these two, there would have been a median cephalic here, and it's the medial interbrachial vein. Well, look at a deeper dissection. Here, biceps has been split, so proximal stump. Here's the tendon, radial tuberosity will be here. Brachioradialis has been retracted laterally to reveal the radial nerve deep to it. Superficial branch here, deep branch here, plunging into the supinator muscle, wrapped around the proximal radius. Again, we see brachialis forming the floor of the fossa, and the musculocutaneous nerve, the distal part of it, just before it becomes the lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm between brachialis and biceps, which has been cut away. Once again, the prominent brachial artery dividing into the radial artery here, the ulnar artery here, and the median nerve medial to it. Here, just passing between two heads of pronator teres. So there's a head that arises from the common flexor origin. There's also another head here, and the median nerve passes between those two heads. That's just about everything you need to know about the cubital fossa. We'll move on next time to the forearm. Until then, I hope you've learned something and enjoy the rest of your day. Ka kite.